Today on the podcast, I have Kevin Miller as a guest. He's written this book, What Drives You. He has a podcast that interviews people so you can hear stories from them about what drives them. And today he's sharing his story because I'm kind of a driven person. So this was like a natural, fun interview, fun everything for me. So thank you, Kevin, for making this happen.
You're the type of people I like talking to and picking their brains and seeing how their journey's been and what they've learned, which that's what you spend your time doing is relaying what you learn. And man, I'm grateful.
Yeah, right? Because when you find your people, you just love to hear like their little version of the click or the twitch or the whatever and why they do what they do and what keeps them going. And some of us, I think, are innately driven. Like I can drive. I just have to make sure I'm driving up the right mountain. That's
the impetus of my book, as you know, is being driven. And I love it. I love people who are driven. I love being driven. I don't take it for granted anymore. And I want to stop sometimes, pause a little bit and make sure I'm going the right way. See if my RPMs are too high is an issue continually. So I'm getting better at auditing my drive, but I am grateful. No doubt, Jen.
Definitely. When did you understand that you were driven? Like you were different from others?
That's a good question. I think to some degree early on, but then as you probably have too, you end up being around driven people. So, I mean, I started off, in sports and I lived and breathed and it was like a marriage with the guys that I raced with. And so I didn't know anything different. It wasn't that big of a deal that I was a pro cyclist because everybody was. I was comparing myself against, Lance Armstrong at the time. And so it was really, I even think and to some degrees, the answer to that question, Jen, is even in the past decade, as I've seen people, just the mental health issues that we're dealing with and realize, man, what a privilege, what a gift that I can't take any credit for, that I wake up in the morning interested and inspired. And, I was grateful to have parents. I saw that modeled, but I think I continue to realize what a gift that is. And I wish I could come up with the secret elixir to why some people tend to be more than others. Though, as you read in the book, now, we got to question our drive. We get credit for being driven if you're driving towards productive things. And yet, like I talk about in the book, man, a drug addict, a meth addict is super driven, but we're not going to give them credit because it's driving towards something we deem as unproductive, which is why I think we all have drive in us. It's just whether we put it in gear and, if it's going towards something that's constructive for us, I'll say.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I read the book, I have 5 boys in a row and getting them to do things that I think they should be doing, homework, just things like that. They don't have any desire, but you put them into something they want to do. You're like, okay, well, you are driven because you are capable of taking this idea or concept or thing that you're interested in from A to Z. But if you're not interested in it, how do we transfer that drive over into other activities that you need to still perform in?
Oh, it's so funny, Jen, because I've got privilege of having some kids older than yours. So I've seen 5, 6 out of the house, I guess. And to see them, those chores you can't get them to do. And then they wake up the next morning in their own apartment and they do it. They get it done. I don't have any kid where I've gone in and they never did the dishes or they've never done their laundry. They get it done. They've got the drive there, but the motive's not quite as strong here at home.
So throughout your research, because you've been interviewing people for a long time, amazing guests on your show, what's something that's surprising that you've discovered about people's inner drive and like how it manifests?
What really shocked me when I realized it was that they were all clear on a direction, and which sounds so elementary. You think, duh, but I was realizing that, man, I'm always driving, but I hadn't really been clear on a direction. I never really sat back and said, I want to do this as a vocation, or now I had certain goals, kind of like you going, dude, I want to climb that mountain. I'm going to go do that. So I did. I have a lot of, good stories in that essence, but some of the overall vision for myself of who I wanted to be, I didn't look that far out. And it was after having so many, probably after I had, eclipsed like 200 people, all rock stars in human potential, and realized, man, they all had something that motivated them kind of long term of saying, I want to do that. And it wasn't even always good. It might've been something, and I had a guy on and his dad died. And for some reason, as a 9-year-old kid, he decided it was his fault. And because of that, he's going to go become a doctor and save the world. And so he goes and does that, and then realizes later that he hates being a doctor, but I still appreciate that they have this long-term motive. And I never really had one thing that said, oh, I want to do that. And that's what led into my book, really, was realizing that, gosh, I love drive. So here's the good part of drive, but the drive in and of itself is not the holy grail, because you can drive yourself into a ditch. And I kind of kept doing that to some degree.
My personality is one of those where I'm driven and then I figure it out and then I want to do something different. Right? Like I was in a car accident in 2018 that should have killed me. And I know before that accident, I was like, okay, this is what success looks like. And this is what this is. And this is what, all those things. After that accident, I was like, oh, wait, I get to define success. And maybe I don't want to be in finance my entire life because I get one shot of it as I know it. So I want to have all these like different things that when I look back on my life, I can be, oh, I was a mom and I was a mountaineer and I was a finance person and I built this business and I spoke on that stage. And so I think it can change on what you do. And some of us are just chronic. I mean, my brother keeps asking, okay, so when's this hurrah done? Like, what's next?
Maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I had Robert Waldinger on the show. Had him on a couple of times. He's the guy, his TED Talk on happiness has like 60 million views. He's a Harvard professor, with this, the grant study. So he's the fourth director of this study on humanity and really focused on happiness. And I asked him literally, personally, just kind of achievements, where he was at in his own achievements. And he said, he says, I really like going after achievements, and I've got some that I want to do, even though he's 62, 65. But he said, I'm much more interested in enjoying the path that I'm on. Okay. So he told me that was about a year ago. And it's just, I think, one of those things that's gnawed at me. And just what you said, Jen, realizing, I look at these goals, I just kind of instinctively look at them as this holy grail destination. And yet I know when I reach it, I'm just going to be looking for the next thing.
Right.
And I've kind of grappled with that, because I don't want to minimize the goal. You do want something to go after, but it's really helped. It's helped my peace, I think. Helped my anxiety and some of the angst, and even just excitement that I think wears on me some, to realize, okay, that's a worthy destination. I'm going to go towards that. And when I get there, I'm going to, wake up the next day and go to something else. So the goal is at a scenic destination, a neat experience. Yeah. Is it a pit stop for resources, and you got a raise or you made $1 million? It's great. And then the next day you're still going to go on, because I'm guessing, like you, I don't understand retirement.
No. Yeah, exactly.
I like what I'm doing now. And I've seen great examples of that, from my dad to Zig Ziglar and these guys, people who loved what they did, and kind of helps me take a deep breath, lower my shoulders, be driven, but chill the hell out a little bit sometimes, maybe.
There's driven with enjoyment. Yeah. And there's driven with, like, what does it mean if I don't hit it and all this kind of stuff. So you put all this undue pressure on yourself. And then I was there, like, wait, I picked this thing in the first place. Like, why am I making this miserable? I have the option to enjoy this pursuit and have fun along the way and da-da-da-da-da. But as driven people, those goals give us direction, and they allow us to have this filter of what we should say yes to and what we should say no to. Yeah. But it's also that check-in of, am I having fun? Because this game is supposed to be fun.
I don't have that figured out, Jen. I mean, because I'll sit there and, the whole thing on anxiety, and I struggle with it, not because I'm just some chronic warrior. I just get amped up. I mean, I had a therapist say, you don't need caffeine. You're just kind of
I know.
caffeinated.
I can't, don't add caffeine to this body. We have problems.
And you're doing something that's exciting, that's meaningful. And yet I realize that my shoulders are up to my ears. I go, what, dude,
Yeah.
what is going on? And yeah, so coming back and going, enjoy it. And it's again, such an elementary overused thing now, but of being present, like right now. And I spend more time than I've ever done just sitting, I'm looking out the window at the national forest and the snow right out my door here. And I can just be okay right here, right now. And it's kind of changing my drive from go, go, go to sit. I had one of my kids who helped me learn to don't just do something, Dad, sit there. Okay. You're right. Thanks, buddy.
What I love about the book for people that are driven, and even people that aren't driven, like we're all driven, but sometimes we don't know what our motives are, right? Like we don't know if we're running from something because we haven't really sat and explored it. And in the chapters, you give us space to say, okay, wait, I have this feeling. Where is it coming from? Was it taught to me? Was it ingrained in me? Is it even mine? So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that was a really powerful exercise to go through.
I did want to give people permission to step back and question ultimately their values, what they think of as their values and their beliefs. And are they actually yours? Or is it the things you've adopted from your family, the things you've adopted from your culture, and realizing, oh my gosh, like, with my kids, they've experienced relatively globally so little, and I can't help them experience everything, and their values come from that. And I wanted to give them and everyone permission, myself included, to step back and go, wait, what do I want relationally? Do I want to get married and have 100 kids? Some of my kids absolutely do not. I wanted them to be able to step back from my values and my goals and question what did really motivate them. And yeah, as you have seen, Jen, it was my kids helped me so much with the whole nature versus nurture thing. I wanted to believe that everything was just nurture. You make yourself, you create yourself. And just realizing, holy smokes, man, they came out wired in so many ways. That continues. I think I continue to devolve from that perspective.
There's a test that you tell people to take in the book. I'm going to forget what it is, but neither of us scored the lowest in the nurture, our shadow, whatever. I'm a shadow nurture. I'm a warrior as my number one.
Wow. Yeah. It wasn't that I wasn't kind and gentle and stuff, but I just didn't understand. I didn't understand my own emotions. And so I didn't understand theirs. So in the parenting differently, I think I did to some degree, but it was a little limited because I just didn't understand the emotional core of each kid. And now I'm able to, and I can do my best with that. And I think every kid I'm better with, obviously, but some of the older ones, they know, we talk about it openly now. I think that's the redeeming grace. I said, guys, I'm sorry, man. I did not know. And so, I'll pay for your counseling.
That's so cute. I tell everybody, I'm like, my twin daughters came as a pair because if there was one girl after 5 boys, she'd be in therapy for life. So now I'm hoping that the two of them disperse that a little bit.
They need each other, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, but there is, if you buy the book, which everybody who's watching this podcast, I highly recommend because there's so many good pieces of it, but it talks about some different personality tests that you can take. And one of them, I can't name it right now for some reason, we'll put it in the show notes, but you do get to find out what your shadow piece is and what your main driver is. And it's just helpful to know because then you can realize, oh, am I showing up too aggressively or too much like a warrior in my stance?
I continue to learn from those different profiles and find new ones. I think even since I did the book, I did the human design blueprint.
Yeah. What are you on that one? What are you, a human design?
A manifesting generator.
Yes, I can see that. Only 33% of the world is a manifesting generator.
Oh, I didn't know that. What are you?
Yeah, manifesting generator. So
that one's significant. It pulled some things out that I wasn't aware of, and it made sense. It actually kind of irritated me, a couple of things. I said, no, that is not true. And then as I did mine through Erin Claire Jones with Human Design Blueprint. And as she talked me through it, son of a gun, you're right. And I mean, it's really shaped how I come into projects in essence, or come in and realize that, I was just blind to myself. I mean, that's so much. I mean, that in the book, one of the quotes I put in there is from Yogi Berra, and they're driving around and they go past the same landmark. And his wife says, we're lost. He says, yeah, but we're making good time. And it's so funny, but I actually heard it from David Lee Roth. Honestly, I heard him paraphrase it. And son of a gun, I do that. And I do enjoy driving fast. I enjoy speed in a lot of ways, but holy smokes, man, sometimes I don't know where we're going.
In your book, you do talk a little bit about most self-help books are about changing behaviors. And you wrote this one because you really felt like emphasizing what drives you first is the most important piece. So can you elaborate on that a little bit for our listeners today?
I want to give so much credit to, everybody I've had on my show. I did, as we look, ultimately, it was, what does motivate you? What is driving you at the core? That is really where, that so much rides on that. And if we miss that, like I did in some ways, if we miss is what's really driving us, we'll find out something's driving us we're not aware of, and we end up someplace where we don't want to go. I think it's on the back cover of my book. It was an endorsement from Jordan Harbinger. And he said it was the prequel to Habits, like to James Clear's Atomic Habits. This is the prequel, because even that, having good habits, well, it presupposes that we're even driven enough to have good habits, to make a change, whatever. So I kept wanting to back up as I heard these messages. And so I wrote the book trying to get us to, let's back up, understand what we really value, what we really believe. Because at the end of the day, that is what drives us. And we get clear on that. It blew me away to see when people get clear on their values and go, man, I just had, because people don't think about it. This is what I really value for me. Well, they don't need a whole lot of motivation and rah-rah-ree at that point. They just get clear. And that, again, my kids were my initial muse. I wanted that. I realized that at the end of the day, what do I want most for them? I want them to know what they really care about and be able to devote themselves to it. That's again, along with being driven, that's probably one of my greatest things I'm most grateful for, is being able to do work that I care about. And I want that for them. I don't want them just having a job to pay the bills. I want them to do that. So again, what do you value? Because they came to me, so where am I going? What direction? Let's figure out what you care about, what makes you tick, what drives you.
Right. Which then also leads us into this section of your book where you talk about authentic drive and adopted drive. That little trigger, because a lot of times when we start peeling back those layers in some of the exercises that you help expose for ourselves, we realize, oh, wait, maybe this isn't mine.
That one hurt a little bit when I first started becoming aware of it. And it was my oldest son. He was probably 16, 17 at the time. And I mean, I grew up, my dad was a lifetime entrepreneur. I never knew him to do anything else, always worked for himself. And except for 2 years of my life, that's been me as well. So the kids have never seen anything but that. And I held it up as a holy grail. And it wasn't really true. What I wanted is people just to be free to do what they cared about. If they can find that in a 9-to-5 W-2, whatever job, great. I don't care about self-employment, but I didn't get that. So I just saw self-employment as my vehicle and held on. It was finally my kids. They grew up going to farmers market. We had them go there and sell stuff. I wanted them to learn business and people skills, which they did. But then here's my son, and he's needing to make some money. And he finally says, Dad, I know that, you love being an entrepreneur. And he may have even said it somewhat of, I know being an entrepreneur is best. I think he said that. He said that. And he says, but I just don't feel that right now. I want somebody to kind of guide me and tell me what to do. Oh, my heart sank. Oh my gosh, I've done that to make that the better thing, the right thing. And I apologize, but I had to admit that that's what I had been doing. And that was an adopted drive that he was sitting there struggling with. Oh my gosh. So I've done a lot of backpedaling on that. And again, back to the book of going, okay, guys, what really does drive you? What are you wired for? And giving a lot more focus and credit to that.
And just that space too, I think when we know what drives us and then we lock that into our values, when we get into sticky situations, like I'm climbing mountains that I'm making decisions on, do I continue or do I come home or whatever? And
Yeah.
I have to check those values the entire time because I can get lost in the drive. The summit fever is a thing. Like when you get close to the top, it just pulls you in, even if it's not the right thing. And so I have to consciously just check in like, okay, am I going to make it home? Am I going to make it home? Am I going to make it home? Because I value coming home more than I value touching the top of this mountain.
Yeah.
And so I had to turn around on 3 of the 7-second summits to go back a second time because it just wasn't the time to do it. And understanding that drive's going to pull you forward, but that doesn't always that's not always the best move. And having those stop losses to check yourself and to make sure like, hey, is this really where I need to go or what I want to be doing right now? And will I end up winning?
Well, I think that's wisdom, what you just said there. And that was not, I don't think gosh, yeah, if you go to sports, it's not what we teach in there. There, it's just, you go, the drive is everything. And it doesn't matter if your leg falls off, you just keep going.
Right.
And it can serve you well in a sport to a degree, unless you destroy yourself. But I took that into life. And I did a lot of just ridiculous things I just took it into being an entrepreneur and just, I prided myself in risk, and it didn't always pan out. I hurt myself. I hurt other people, and I didn't have that wisdom. Was a long time coming. What you're talking about there, it's still difficult to turn back.
Well, but it's one of those things that I have to like program in. It's not automated, right? Like it's every hour my watch goes off on my phone or on my alarm goes off. And so that I can check in and just be like, okay, wait, is my drive pulling me up this mountain or is this the best decision for me right now? Because it's not autopilot. Autopilot for me is go. I'm an easy start. I am a hard stop. And when you learn that about yourself, which is what drives you, right? That it gives you this awareness of, oh, this is how I'm driven. This is what I'm doing. Is this really what I want to be doing? What do I need to do for my personality to make sure I'm showing up as my authentic self and living the values that I want to live, not just the drive because the drive's there.
It's so good, Jen. You put it well. I still feel like on one hand, I'd like to get my values tattooed, on my forearm, just to remind myself every day going, okay, am I living up to these? And then also though that your values change, which I didn't get that either. I thought values are kind of like morals. They never change. If you don't cheat, you don't cheat, you don't cheat. But values, what I value, it's changed. There's certain things like it used to be, you make the mountaintop no matter what. That's not my highest value now. I really want to be able to function the next day. So I'm going to take that into account. And I had the worst wreck, injury of my life just over a year ago. I don't want to do that again. So, I've had guys ask me, so did you lose your nerve? Since I said, no, but I'm much more aware of it and what the costs are. And if I brake instead of going 100 miles an hour down that hill, it's not because I lost my nerve, but hopefully, like you just said, Jen, I just got a little wiser.
How do you balance, because there's an interesting intersection between collaborative drive and individual drive, right? I watch everything in my house with 5 boys is crowdfunded. Okay. The first one thinks hey, I'm just going to jump off this step to the bottom into the pile of pillows. The next one's going to go 2 steps higher. And then pretty soon they're jumping the balcony into a pile of pillows. That's 2 stories. So it's interesting because knowing your drive and then knowing how it shows up in a group setting and how to manage that. Do you have any advice for people?
Oh my God. No.
I love it.
Actually, here, let me ask you this, because this is an interesting one to me as I saw my kids go so many different directions. And I read about, I don't know if you know the guy's name, some famous chess player, really famous chess player. He had 2 daughters. I think there's even a movie about it or something, or some book about it. And he raised both of his daughters to play chess, and they both became grand champions. And I'm thinking, what are the odds that that was the proper direction for both of these girls? I started kind of looking at my own values and go, would I be prouder if each one of them, I got 9 kids. They're all pro cyclists. They're all entrepreneurs. They all had 9 kids as well. Would that say more about me, or to say, I got 9 kids, man, and they are everywhere. They're all over the board. I have none. Let's say at this point, I have one that's an entrepreneur, full on. And I have no athletes, none of them.
I have 7 children. I am an extreme athlete. I've been an extreme athlete my whole life. There's potential for one. Like, I'm still holding out on one of them being an athlete, which I think is fascinating, because I'm like, okay, so what are your thoughts? What are you doing? Like, how is this working for you? Do you miss like being pushed or hustled, or don't you want to know how fast you can get to that side of the field and who you can beat? And my kids are just, no, we're good.
I did get a lot of feedback from them on they loved seeing me do what inspired me. That was a great gift. And they're all very health conscious. They work out and exercise and eat better than I do at this point. Most of them do, not all of them. But yeah, no athletes. And that was, gosh, coming back to drive and what do you value? And I had one kid who we had him in running, because we did have the kids do some sports, but we had him in running, and he just did not ever get beat, period. Track, cross country, nothing. And I'm thinking, all right, here's my guy. The Olympic Training Center is just down the mountain from us. And ultimately he said, Dad, I hate it. He said, I hate it. He says, I can't, the pressure is just too much. And so I'm literally taking him to races and saying, okay, dude, just get 10th. Just get 10th. And he's like, I can't. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And he would push himself till he puked. And I'm like, just chill. And he said, I'm out. So we got him into soccer and he loved it. He was the fastest guy on the team. He didn't even want to play offense. He played defense and he just liked it. He says, the focus is not on me and I get to be part of the team. And that was his thing until he, kind of aged out, and now he's academic and not going to be the athlete. But that was another one for me to look at and go, gosh, back to what you asked, adopted values. I mean, it's not something that they have interest in. They're interested in awesome things.
Yeah. I have a son that's 12 who's a DJ, and he'll say, hey, Mom, can you feel that beat? And I'm like, I wish I could feel beats. I am not wired the way that you are, but I love that you just used the word, can I feel that? Because that's awesome.
Totally. Well, you get it. It's been the book was from my own learning, my own journey, and the kind of the good and bad of drive. I could have given the title that, the good and bad of drive. But as you keep pulling out, the impetus for it it's almost like the hidden agenda of the book was to get us to look at our values. What do we value? And that's what I see people who, if I hear somebody claim that they're not driven, I'll find somebody who's generally really unclear on what they do care about. And back to what you said, Jen, and I'll find that their values are pretty much adopted. Either they adopted them, or the one that got me too was when we think that we rejected them. No, my parents did that. And I saw that, how terrible it was. So I went the other way. Well, it's still just a reaction. It's almost like an anti-adoption, but it's still not your own looking and auditing yourself and going, what do
fear is a motivator, right? So if you're like, I don't want that story, so I'm going the other direction. Thank you very much.
Yeah. It doesn't mean it's authentic to you.
Right.
Man, I see the collateral damage. And again, I've seen that in myself and then so many other people.
Okay. So for somebody that's reading the book and they haven't found their drive, that I think the questions in the chapters like help you get that clarity, because once you have clarity, drive shows up. I have yet to meet an individual that's not driven about something. Have you encountered any?
If you're a couch potato watching Netflix every day,
that's work.
It's drive. It's drive, or like I put in the book, I cited like the fattest person ever. I don't think we can say fat anymore, but that's what they called it in the Guinness Book of World Records. And I thought, man, that takes some drive. The dude crafted his life, found people to come feed him because he couldn't move. There's some things happening here to make that happen. I think people are, I do give credit. Sometimes I think they're sitting in park or neutral. I do find people. And I find that just like you said, here's your quote. Once you have clarity, your drive shows up. So they're sitting there on the couch, they're binge watching. If they'll get clarity and look at what do they value. And like I put in the book, some of the questions to answer, or they may just need to go out and try some stuff, expose themselves to something to figure out where it is, what it is that they do value. The drive is there. It'll just click into gear.
No, and I think I want to hit on that point you said a second ago about just try things. because sometimes driven people are so focused on being good at something that it's scary to try something new, because they're like, oh, does this mean I have to drive it to the finish line? Do I have to drive it to the finish line? Because that's what I've built my brand around and that's who I'm known as. And so I don't want to touch it because that means I have to, that's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
I would say my accident again, like some people have these like tsunami type events in their lives that cause the shakeup. And other times it's just these little nudges that give you like crumbs along the way. But when we allow ourselves that space to say, okay, this doesn't have to be on brand. I don't have to take it to the top. I'm allowed to test it and try it and see what I think and then go from there. Like when I said I was going to climb Everest, I'd never slept in a tent before.
Wow.
It was so foreign to me, but I allowed myself, well, let's just try it. Like, obviously people survive that sleep in tents, so I'm sure I can give it a shot. And when you allow yourself that space to try things, like I would have never known that I like to climb mountains if I didn't give myself a chance to even try it. And now I crave it because I love no one says mom for like a few days, right? Yep. And you're in nature. There's no one to compete with. It is just truly the space that in the beginning was uncomfortable for me. And now I'm like, oh, there's so much to learn just being in this speed. And can I bring this speed home and live in it in a different way?
Yeah, gosh, that's okay. I went to, I don't know, your website or it was your YouTube channel. And I saw all these postings from Sayulita, Mexico. Last year, I'm the mountain guy, and so mountain biking and running and kayaking and skiing and yada yada. I went with 12 guys to Sayulita to surf. I had never surfed, and I sucked. I mean, it was just
it's so bad to be bad at something, isn't it? It's so hard.
Got the snot beat out of me. I thought it was so hard. It was so hard. I just spent most of the time in the water feeling like I'm getting beat up by the waves. I think I'm going to scrape my nipples completely off and my ribs are bruised and oh my gosh. And it reminded me that I had kind of gotten into that rut of just doing the things that I was good at, that I was comfortable in. And it was, I can't necessarily redeem it. I didn't learn I need to go back. I didn't learn to surf great. It was really difficult. And yet it was also cool just being that stretched. Trying new things is, I think, even as somebody who's driven, I realize the rut that I can get into of just doing what I do well and how I'm limiting myself or I'm not, or there's just more. There's just more.
Yeah, there's just more, right? And it gives you this space of empathy, because when you get good at something, you forget what it takes to get good at it because you're at the peak. Yeah. And so when I try new things, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like to not be good at something. This is a good thing to keep in my repertoire of how this feels.
It really is. I need to keep thinking about that. I've done some adventures, even after that when we went and did stand-up paddleboarding on a river and then mountain biking. So we're out mountain biking and I do well out there. The guys know that that's kind of my home. And I said, yeah, wait, we'll be humbled as soon as we get in the river. And sure enough, man, I had never done it and I was not that great. And it was just a good.
Don't look at the board. Don't look at the board. Look in front of you farther than the board.
Even the humbling aspect of it was good to not always be in that place where I feel so, well, I was going to say confident, but you do bring the confidence over. It's not like you lose your confidence. I don't know. You can play with that one because I wasn't confident in that modality, but I still was in and of myself.
Well, because you had so much confidence to spill over. I think when we there's a sweet spot during our day, especially when we're learning something where, you watch it with your kids doing homework, right? Like you realize, okay, you're out of your sweet spot. You've been beat up by too many math problems in a row. Yeah. Let's go back to another subject that we're good at so that you can build that energy up again. And then let's pour it back into this math. But right now, continuing down this path of math isn't going to help us.
That's really good. I had this discussion recently, Jen, with somebody. There's a guy, and it was a while ago, but it came back up in my mind as he looked at me and he said, man, I wish I was as disciplined as you, Kevin. And he said that because from the outward standpoint of, exercise and fitness and, being an entrepreneur and whatever, but I knew something about the guy. I said, wait, tell me about your finances. And the guy had just it wasn't a fancy job. I can't remember what it was. It was kind of a blue collar, even like some manual stuff, but he made decent money, but he was really good with money and he had millions in the bank. He's like 45 and he didn't really need to work anymore. I said, dude, that's discipline to me. And again, back to that thing, how we so minimize what we do well because we just do it well and we take it for granted. And man, we look at these, especially we were talking before the show about social media and whatnot, and we see people, and I think it makes people feel so insignificant, and they compare themselves against these people that they're not, and they don't realize. As I'm working with clients, and I'll pull out, they'll act like that, and I'll pull out these things in their own lives. Go, man, that is amazing that you did this. And it's just commonplace to them. Yeah, we don't see our own brilliance, I guess.
Yeah. It's all, I mean, anything driven, I'm all about, right? I love learning about it. I love exploring it. I love hearing other people's stories of it, because we all have this life that we do these unique things with. And it starts with drive, right? For you to get to wherever you are, you had some kind of drive to wherever that is in your story and all the stories of the people that you interview. So we buy the book and we listen to the podcast. How else do we keep in touch with you?
The podcast is where I do most of my learning. I post long form shows. We'll have one with you on Mondays and Fridays. And on the days in between, though, like when you're on the show, I'll do that on Monday. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are me really just thinking through things that I gleaned from you and your message, and that I'm pondering, and I ponder them out loud and people listen to it. And that is where I really appreciate getting to journey with people. And I get a lot of feedback. They enjoy it because it's not like I'm the master at everything. They get to be a student along with me, and that's the best place. So I live and breathe on the podcast. What drives you?
All right, perfect. Be sure to subscribe. I've been listening to episodes. I love them, so thank you, and we will be in touch.
I'm honored. Thank you. And man, I've got so many questions for you. I'll go through them on my show with you.
Woo! You can watch both shows, see both of us.
Yep.